Hello again. I know it's been a few days, but I've had to go to Oklahoma for a company board meeting, and then I went on to North Carolina. I'm with Russell and Lori in Tarboro, North Carolina. But I thought today we would start with visiting with you a little bit about a horse by the name of Cesar and what it takes to get a horse, to buy a horse, the whole story of doing that. When Kamari and I were first married, not long after we were married, I was finding horses and making jumping horses out of them and then selling them. And I used to go to horse sales, and I had a sheet made up of what I was looking for in a horse. And I wanted one that was 16 hands, good looking and nice horses. But mainly I was looking for horses that were at least 16 hands tall. And I had a sheet made up that I'd put under people's windshields at all of these, describing what I wanted and giving my contact information. Well, I'd been to a sale in Ada, Oklahoma, and they didn't have anything that I was really interested in there, but I'd put these sheets around on their windshields. And the next day I got a call. We were living there in Perkins, Oklahoma. I got a call from Bolivar, Missouri. And a man said, I have a horse that you might want. He's certainly tall, said he's 17 hands. And it was really rare to find a true 17-hand horse. I could usually deduct 2 inches from what people told me, and that'd be about what they were. And Bolivar, Missouri was quite a ways from me. It was a good 300 miles. And we visited about it a little bit, and he said, I wouldn't kid you. He says he was ruled off of the racetrack because he bucked all the jockeys and exercise people off. And I said, but he is 17 hands. And said he's not real good looking, but he's 17 hands. And so I said, what do you want for him? And he said $300, which was within the price range that I was looking at back then. And so we visited a little while, and we made sure that we're measuring from the ground to the top of the withers to measure the height. And I told him, I said, 300 miles is a long ways to come look. And I said, but I'll come look. And I said to him, I'll make a deal with you. If he's 17 hands and I like him, I'll give you the $300. But if he's a quarter of an inch under that 17 hands or less, he's mine for a $100 bill. Do you want me to come? And he thought for a moment, and he says, I think he's 17 hands, come on. And so I got in the truck and trailer and drove up to Bolivar, Missouri, and drove out to his farm that he'd given me directions to. We didn't have GPS like we have now. You had to have directions to get to them. And his directions, when I got to town, it told me to come outside of town, and I'd go up kind of a long hill. And when I got to the top of the hill, I was to take the first left-hand turn. I was to go down that until I had a crossroad, and I was supposed to turn right. And he gave me directions to his house. Well, I got to the top of the long hill, and there wasn't a left-hand turn, so I drove on about a quarter of a mile and came to a left-hand turn, and I took it, drove about 2-3 miles down it. The road came to a T, and I'm on the stem of the T, and he said to turn right, and at the crossroads, there wasn't a crossroads, it was just a T. But I turned right and drove into his farm. Anyway, I got out, and this big horse was standing down in the corral, and the man came out of the house. And we watched him a little bit and watched him move around the corral, and he was ugly. He had a huge Roman nose. Now, a Roman nose is, if you look at the face of a horse, typically the face of a horse is flat, and a Roman nose is round, so that from the top of their head down to the nose is just round. And he was probably 1.5 inches out. And that's not a good characteristic to have. Most Roman nose horses are not very good. But he was 17 hands. In fact, he was 17 hands and 1/4 inch. And so I said, well, let's put my saddle on him and try him. And man got real nervous. And he said, he may buck with you. And I said, if I can't ride him, I'm not going to buy him. And so we put my saddle on and I climbed on him, and he bucked a little bit, but he didn't really know how to buck. And of course, remember, I had paid my way through college riding bareback broncs and bulls and rodeos. And so I didn't mind one bucking with me a little bit. Anyway, I gave him his $300 and loaded him in the trailer, and I took him home to Perkins, to Cedar Bluff Ranch. And he was a big bay horse, Roman-nosed and straight-shouldered. Again, straight-shouldered horses usually don't jump very well because they can't get their knees up and out of the way very easily. But I got him home. I knew I could make a little bit of money on him and started playing with him, and this thing could jump through his skin. He was as clever in front. He would jump and his head and neck would be down between his knees when we first started schooling him. And he was brave. I had figured he was brave because he was Roman-nosed, and typically they're kind of tough horses. So I started jumping him a little bit, and he didn't buck with me much. He would a little bit when he'd get mad at me, and I had him about a month and a half and had jumped him over some fences, and I called a trainer down in Texas, Jerry Caswin. He had a group of people, and I really needed some money. And so I told Jerry, I said, listen, I've got a horse that really can jump. He's green. I've only been schooling him now about 40 days. And we agreed on a price. And the price, I did really well. I sold him to Jerry for $5,000. Now, you may think that's soaking someone, but I had gotten a product that nobody could use, and I was making him useful. So I took him down to Jerry and sold him, and Jerry, at the first 4 shows Jerry took him to, the horse bucked him off in the warm-up ring. But he could jump. And so Jerry was showing him a little bit, and Jerry turned around in less than a month and a half, or about a month and a half, sold him for $20,000. So they took him to California, started showing him in preliminary jumpers, which is the beginning, but he's jumping 4-foot fences. And of course, with a horse that big, all he has to do is get his legs out of the way. And if they're brave, they can do that pretty well. Well, he went to Diane Mitchell in California, and Diane rode him for almost 5 months, sold him for $80,000, and sold him to some people that were wanting a horse to take to the Olympics. And so they schooled him for about a year, and they went to the Olympics with him. He won a bronze medal. We had called him, I'd named him Cesar. His registered name was Big Boy R. And anyway, he was really a talented horse and did really well. I wish I could have afforded to keep him, but most of my horses, I would buy them and work them a little while, and I was trying to make food to put on the table and some of that, and so I sold them sooner than what you might think otherwise. But he was around the open jumper circuit back east for a long time and did a really good job. I was proud to have been an owner with him. So that was Cesar. And so have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.